So I'd like to thank Patty, Michael, and Deb for sharing their stories with us today. And now we'd like to field any questions that you may have at this point.
I'm Claire Hughes from the Times Union. I'm confused a little bit about the availability, like what's available now in the vaccine given the 5 serotypes you mentioned. And you mentioned ACEP is recommending that is it type B?
Serogroup B?
That it not be given except in an outbreak. Is that what?
Right, it's FDA approved.
Okay, so right now, this bill would cover the vaccine that would be the 4 other serotypes, but would not include that 5th strain? Is that what I'm understanding, or do I have that wrong?
I believe it to include all meningococcal vaccinations.
Okay, so the recommendation from ACEP notwithstanding,
Right.
the vaccine that's available now that somebody can get anyway.
Yes, you can get it.
Available with all 5. Okay, okay.
You can get the B vaccine at your doctor. You can ask for it. You have to pay for it out of pocket at this point.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
What is the current requirement? I know you were mentioning college. Is that all colleges, or is that just public colleges? And then private colleges have different policies? No?
I mean, each state is unique. I don't know who could speak to the, oh, sorry.
In New York.
Yeah, each state is unique, and they're generally, guidance is either an educational mandate where parents need to be aware of the risk and agree, or a vaccination mandate. In New York,
In New York,
Correct.
actually,
Education.
students are allowed to opt out.
so it's an education.
College students?
Yes.
And again, what the bill would call for would be vaccination for middle school as well as college. And 25% of meningitis cases today are between the ages of 15 and 24. So that's the highest risk group, since they're very often together and common places, sharing water bottles, kissing, drinks,
Is this a one-time vaccination, or do you have to get a booster at some point, or?
Yeah, there's a booster. So the putting serogroup B aside for a second, the vaccination for all others is twice, once, and then a booster is recommended as well. And the boost.
How long after the initial vaccination?
Booster is within. Do you want to take it? We have our expert out. Our expert out. Come on out. Make sure we get it right.
I'm actually Pat Clancy from the Medical Society of the State of New York. I'm not a physician, but I am Vice President for Public Health and Education. The bill would actually require vaccination in the 6th grade with a booster in 11th grade, and this would cover actually college-age students because the antibodies last for 5 years. Obviously, as the student enters adulthood, there will be additional vaccines as an adult.
So the kids wouldn't be allowed in school if they didn't get the vaccine? Is that how it works?
Well, it would be a requirement for school admission.
I'm curious, with 3 families, how come no one else in your family, if this is highly contagious? I mean, you had it, your children had it, and you didn't, other people didn't get it in your family. I mean,
Yeah.
you just said that it's not just contact
Yeah.
with a water bottle, but it's a cough. I mean, it's something, it could be airborne, right?
But they also did treat.
Yeah, we had to be treated with Cipro, which is an antibiotic, and along with about 50 other young people who were exposed because Lindsay was celebrating her birthday. So it was a very tense time, to say the least, because none of us knew if someone else would come down with it.
Does anyone have an example of that it spread to someone else?
Not within family. I think the closest examples we would see would be the outbreaks you've seen on college campuses
Right.
in Oregon, in Rochester, in Princeton, and then from campus to campus, someone from Princeton infecting a student who was visiting from Drexel and taking it back to Drexel. So those are probably the closest examples we would see of.
Mike, you were in a car, you were driving from Maine to Long Island,
Mhm.
you were in a car with family, I mean,
Right.
isn't that
Yeah, I mean,
But
One-
where your family was treated, though, too.
They were
And
treated.
once you're treated with Cipro, you actually prevent the disease. And obviously, in those outbreaks, in those communities, like in the Rochester community, there would be a circle of friends and family members that they would provide immunizations for.
and then within the hospital, I was
Yes.
kept in, contamination
Right.
control, single room.
Right.
Anyone that entered the room had to have a mask.
Just thinking, I mean,
Yeah,
you
thank
gave
God,
some-
right?
you
I
gave
would-
a story that was very close contact with your wife. Your wife
Right.
saw this on your skin. I mean, it was
Yeah.
something that.
I slept in my
Very
daughter's
lucky.
bed with her the whole night before. When she was sick, I stayed in bed with her all night.
I did too. That's one of the scary things about this disease is there is no way to pinpoint who or how the person has contracted it. And it happens so quickly. So, I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, really, with this. And it makes it very, very important that the only proven way that we can prevent this from happening is through this vaccination. And that's why it's imperative.
Just say one thing as well. 15 to 20% of the population are actually carriers of the meningococcus bacteria, unknowingly carrying it in the back of their nose and throat. And they have no symptoms, and they will not get the disease. So unknowingly, they're passing it on to somebody. If they had been vaccinated, that wouldn't be happening.
I'm curious about your family and friends. When they
Right.
had, you had to inform them, or the hospital informed
Yes,
them
yes,
about
it's a
when
reportable
they had to come
disease.
in
It
with
is.
Cipro, where they believed that you informed them, or pissed off that you were
Oh,
around?
very relieved. Very, very
Yeah,
relieved.
but New York State does require, it's a reportable disease.
I'm just curious
Yeah.
what the
Oh, no, they were
feelings were.
Yeah.
very much, very eager to get the
I have
Cipro.
two questions about the vaccine. One is, does anybody know the current rate of vaccination in New York, even without the mandate? And the second was I think, Michael, it was you who mentioned that there are other states where vaccination is mandated and that the rate of disease is lower. Can you name a few?
I don't
Well,
want to get the stats wrong.
New York State has a rate probably about 80%. And is it North Dakota? That has
That's a better one.
96%
Of what?
rate of immunization for meningitis.
And so the rates of disease are lower if you.
Yes,
look that up.
yes. I mean, the whole concept here is herd immunity. The more people that are immunized, the less people that will be impacted.
Has there been any cases where someone who got the antibiotic Cipro was still affected with meningitis?
I don't know that, so.
Can you still opt out?
If the bill is passed, you mean? I think it has to be for,
It
there are
has to
some
be
exceptions.
for religious or medical reasons.
But we see what's going on with MMR.
Yep.
Exactly.
So this,
Yeah.
well, the net becomes a little bit bigger,
Mm-hmm.
but perhaps not necessarily as big as you would like.
I think a lot bigger is what we're seeing in the other states. And apologize for not having the statistics. I'm sure they're in your press handouts. But I think we're seeing where it is mandated or required, the percentages are higher and the number of cases are lower, bottom line.
If I can just go, I'm sorry if I'm a little dense here. 4 strains are mandated now?
4 strains are covered in the present vaccine that is given, okay? And that is recommended, that vaccine is recommended for students in 6th grade and with a booster in high school. And it is recommended by the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, and insurance and Medicaid does cover it along with vaccines for children. The meningitis B vaccine has actually gone before the ACIP for consideration, and right now their recommendation, which was a recent recommendation, is that it actually be used in outbreaks. Now, meningitis B, there was an outbreak in New York City a couple of years ago, and they actually immunized people on with that strain.
So what you're asking for would be to require the 1 through 4 plus B?
Actually, the way the bill is written is that any recommendation by the ACIP be considered. So eventually, we're hoping that ACIP will recommend the fifth strain too.
They recommend, but it's not mandated. You can go to school without having that vaccine.
Yes. Yes.
Right now.
Right now.
The law that you're looking at would mandate that for admission to school.
For the 4 strains, because that's what ACIP currently
So
recommends.
that's really, at the heart of this
Yeah.
is to mandate the 4
Right.
strain in 6th grade and then 11th.
Yeah, and when we're talking about strains, we're not talking about 4 different shots. It's 1 shot in 6th grade and 1 shot in 11th grade, and eventually, hopefully, that they'll incorporate all 5 vaccines into the 1 shot.
It's an interesting case study on the vaccine and its effectiveness. In Africa, they have had a much larger problem. There's something called the meningitis belt that goes right across the center of Africa, and they had over every single family is impacted. Every family has someone they've lost, or they know of someone in the next house that they've lost or has lost limbs. The CDC got together and gave out over 1 million vaccines. In this area where they had 250,000 cases in 1 year, that following year after the vaccine, they had less than 10. So I think it works.
When did this take effect if it passed this session?
September 1, 2015.
And what about those students who have passed 6th grade but haven't made it to high school yet?
You can always do a catch-up, yeah, so,
Would it be required for them to catch up? if they
probably,
passed 6th grade?
yep.
What's the outlook for the bill in the legislature right now?
Yes, I'm
Assemblywoman
back. Like I said, Assemblywoman Gunther has been an outstanding advocate. We actually have just gotten it introduced in the Senate. Senator Hannan is the sponsor of the legislation, and we're here to advocate today with the Senate side of the aisle to let them know and inform them of the potential impact that this bill would have on New York State and the students of New York State.
So this is the first year that this bill has been introduced?
It was introduced last year by Assemblywoman Gunther and actually Senator Hannan, but it was introduced at the end of session, Claire.
Thank you.
Yeah.